someone says, well, Black women don't want to go to therapy, think about that on a community level. I went to my mother, who is supposed to love me more than anyone. I go to her to tell her my hurts, to tell her that I have been abused, and she shunned me. She told me that it was my fault, all of the things that they do. And then you want me to go up and you want me to sit in front of a therapist who does not know me and they're supposed to understand me? So when we talk about that, we have to understand that the people that we love the most, we go to them and they don't understand us. So I'm not about to go and sit.
And it goes right into to the clip that I'm going to play of our brother on YouTube. His name is Hale Speaks. You can find him at Hale Speaks on YouTube. Let me play this video real quick.
The second thing is, what I've learned about people is a lot of women don't want therapy because if they go to therapy, it takes away the negative reasons that they can use to justify bad behavior. So really,
whoa.
That's true.
Whoa. So what you're saying is women are used to being victims of the goddamn wind blowing, victims of their refrigerators. If they go get therapy, they can't be victims anymore, and they'll just wither and die because they live off of victimization. And if they're no longer victims, they'll just fall out. Is that what you're saying, Sir Hale?
that's precisely it. It's the get out of accountability key. And if they go to therapy, you take away that key, and now they are forced to be responsible. And so it's much more beneficial initially to be a victim than it is to be responsible.
I want to talk about the point that Sir Hale made, and pretty much what Sir Hale was saying is that some women, or a number of women, are avoiding. They're not going to seek therapy because they want to absolve themselves of the responsibility, right? Because it's easier to just play the victim and blame somebody else rather than do the hard work yourself. So Mika, I want to start with you. Then I'm going to go over to Miss O, and then Rico, then Ma'at. Ma'at, you close us out. So my question to you is, do you agree with Sir Hale? And if you don't, can you tell me why you think it's so difficult for Black women to admit they need therapy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with him. I think that therapy in Black women is actually up. I think we've had a huge uptick. I think that a lot of Black women, actually their degrees are in social work and humanities and, a lot of these different things. So I think that I think therapy is another scapegoat for them because, having been a psychology major myself, there's a lot of things that we do, like defensive mechanisms and projection and all these different things that we do, which is actually kind of explained by psychology and therapy, right? So if I go to my therapist and I talk about, how I'm treating my children or how I'm treating my partner or whatever like that, is some accountability, but it's not full accountability. And we had talked about this before. We're consistently going towards people who have consistently proven to us that everything they give us by medicine, by therapy, by education is all against us. So why would we go to these same people and say, jump in my brain, tap dance on my brain, and tell me how to think? And every single thing that you have given me or you have operated in for me has been totally to my detriment. I'm flabbergasted every time people think therapy is the answer for Black people. Therapy is not westernized therapy, right? Spirituality, a sense of community. When your kids walk down the street, they got 15 different parents because Miss Jones down the street finna tell, Miss Kelly down the, you know what I'm saying? And then they about to call your daddy at work, and then he finna find out, and then you gonna get whooped by 4 different people by the time you get home, right? That's what worked for us. This anti-bully policy, anti-this, anti-that. Literally, that was the detriment of our community. When we started telling people, you can't tell my kids nothing,
right,
that was the beginning of the end. And so, no. Never therapy. Never therapy as the solution. No.
I know those that view is going to be pretty controversial, but I get where you're coming from, and I do agree with you on this thing where and it's mainly a lot of sisters who say that, man, don't tell my kid anything. You come and talk to me, but when you go talk to her, she always sides with the kid. I mean, I was still in the military. I was stationed in San Antonio, and I had a situation with one of my daughters, and there was a boy who liked her. He thought he was cute, and he did the stupid thing that boys do. He threw a shoe at her, on the bus, and so my wife had gone down and to talk to his mother, and she was like, did the typical thing that a lot of black mothers do. Oh, no, my boy. My boy would never do that. She looked at him. She's like, did you do it? He's like, no. Well, of course he's going to lie. He's a kid. And so my wife, I'm hearing this secondhand. So my wife comes back and tells me, she said, yeah, I told her. I said, okay, well, when he does it again, I'm going to instruct my daughter to throw the shoe out of the bus. And the shoes were expensive. And so then at that point, she started grilling her son. Don't you ever do that. So, but before that, she was siding 100% with her son. Miss O, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with Sir Hale that our sisters are ducking and dodging therapy because they want to absolve themselves of the responsibility of healing themselves?
I agree with him to an extent. I do feel like some people like the victim role. Some people some people have, the attention they get from that is still attention. Just like when a child is bad, if you giving them spankings, it's still attention. Whether you praise them or not, they're still getting attention. Some women get attention from the victim, from quote unquote being a victim. And a lot of women like that, you know what I mean? So I do think that when he said that, I do think there's some validity to that. Sometimes the truth is kind of ugly and it's dark. And a lot of people would rather not face that. A lot of people rather live with the narrative that they've lived with, that it's somebody else's fault. I mean, no disrespect to my sister, I love her to death, but my sister is 51 years old, and you can't tell her from whether the past marriages that have failed, past relationships that have failed, past situations that she has been in, whether it's her friends or whatever, you cannot tell her that she had anything to do wrong in any of those situations, any of them. There is no accountability. There is no, my marriage ended because, if I would have did this a little different, maybe it hadn't ended, or maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe so when you're not able to take accountability, it's really hard for you to, it's really hard for you to move on. It's really hard for you to see any fault in anything that you're doing. So I do think that, sometimes therapy can definitely help in those situations, bringing things to the light.
Rico, what do you think? Do you think our brother Sir Hale Speaks was on the money, or he was off a bit?
I think he had a valid point, but I'm not going to put it on therapy. I'm going to say seeking help in general. I think that nowadays in society, we have kind of bottled help up as finances, like that's help, or throw a solution at the at the symptom, right? So, the kid's out of control, go over your uncle's house. But we're not looking at how the kid got there, right? And so, or what could you have done different, or what could I have done different so that my child wouldn't be acting out in the way that they are? Could I have done anything different? So, seeking help or counsel to address what I did to contribute to the fire. People put out the fire, but they don't really address what they did. Whether you go into a therapist or to your pastor or your pastor's wife, an elder in the church, your grandma, or I don't think people are doing that. And if they do speak to someone, they tell the story in a way that it kind of absolves them. Hey, I done this, that, and the third, and they don't really leave room for the people to critique them. And it's symptomatic of so many things being displaced, I'd say, over the last 60 years. Because households and neighborhoods like, I forget exactly who mentioned, I think Shamika mentioned it, or Ms. O, one of them mentioned how people lived in the same house or in close proximity. And everything has been displaced now. You had grandma, great-grandma, great-granddad, and probably a couple great uncles in the house. Not just one, several. You had eyes. And they went to school with the neighbors, so those eyes. And so you could hear about yourself. Your parents could hear about themselves years ago. But that's not the case now. Great-grandma is in the home. Great uncle is on the corner drunk. He's not, there's no room for him in the family now. There's no family house. There's no big house anymore. Mm-hmm. There's no big house. Grandma ain't got a house no more. Everything has been displaced. So the kids, a lot of kids didn't have to go to the daycare because they went over grandma's house or the aunt's house. Now they in daycare. Everything is displaced. The mother ain't mothering, grandma ain't grandmaing, fathers ain't fathering. So that's why we have such a need for therapy. People don't even go to church no more. I don't go to church, but people don't even go to church no more. I went to church when I was a kid. So like people not talking to elders. They're not really getting any advice. They're talking to their girlfriends and their homies at work. And
social media is not helping.
YouTube.
I say social media is not helping.
No. Well, because people can pick. They can pick what they want to watch. There's a lot of people who ain't going to watch this video because they don't want to hear about themselves. Because we are talking about them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people ain't going to want to watch it.
Right. Right. You know our brother Hale. What'd you think? Did you were you like when you heard it? Were you like right on? Were you like, eh? What were your thoughts? I mean, is he on to something?
No, I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because we have to be careful when we're having these conversations because there's a lot of layers to these conversations. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times, sometimes we're like trying to put out a message, we're trying to say something, but we're not saying the layers to something. It's kind of like, we talked about the whole divorce rate, right? When on another show of yours, when we talk about like women are the ones who file for divorce, but there's something else there we don't speak about, like the reasonings why. So that's also what we talk about within therapy, because one thing about us, and I think Mika touched on it, Rico touched on it, is the community aspect. So we as Black people, we need community. Mm-hmm. That's something we thrive on community. But what has happened And Mika touched on the fact that we have adopted Eurocentric ideologies, Eurocentric systems. What is a part of Eurocentric system is individualism. You are individual. It does not matter what your brother, your sister, or the people around you are, what they're dealing with. As long as you're good, as long as I'm good, as long as I have that big house, I have that car, I have that career. And so what has happened is because we lack community and we don't trust each other, because as long as these things continue to happen in our community, as long as Black girls and boys, we can't leave them out, are being molested or being hurt or abused, we're not going to trust. We're not going to trust when someone says something about our child. We're going to always have our antennas up like, why are you saying this? Who are you? Like we don't have the community where we can point things out about our children. So when someone says, well, Black women don't want to go to therapy, think about that on a community level. I went to my mother, who is supposed to love me more than anyone. I go to her to tell her my hurts, to tell her that I have been abused, and she shunned me. She told me that it was my fault, all of the things that they do. And then you want me to go up and you want me to sit in front of a therapist who does not know me and they're supposed to understand me? So when we talk about that, we have to understand that the people that we love the most, we go to them and they don't understand us. So I'm not about to go and sit, and I'm not talking about me personally, but I believe in therapy from an African-centered perspective. Like just like Mika said, if you're gonna go to therapy, you have to go to people who understand you, understand how your mind works, how your community works, and have to understand what we are up against in this ecosystem called the United States of America, and the racism and white supremacy that exists in the United States of America. We have to go to people who understand that in order to actually have real therapy. And therapy for Black women has become trendy. It's like this trendy thing. You hear different statements from women who go to therapy. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to therapy. And like Mika said, it has become a crutch for Black women. So as long as you know I'm going to therapy and I'm working on myself, that's all you need to know. But what are you actually doing? What are the steps that you're actually taking? Are you listening? And then like Rico said, I can go tell you a story. I can tell you a story in therapy and I can dress it up, or I can leave important details out. And so you are not going to understand that I have to take accountability in certain situations, because even if I dress up an event or something that happened in my life and it's not the exact truth, because we do that, we leave out important details, then where's the accountability? How can that person really hold me accountable? That's why they say within relationships, sometimes relationships, and that goes back to community, can be the best way to hold someone accountable, because they are right there with you. That's why when you're married, you have your spouse, or you're in a relationship, they're the ones they're your actual mirror. They can actually see you. And so sometimes it's harder because we're like, no, I don't want you to see this. I don't want you to see all of me. But that's why we have to get back to that community aspect. Do I believe in therapy? Yes, I believe in it. But it has to be on a basis where those people understand us. This all trendy, going to therapy, and we spitting out therapy words so we sound like we going to therapy, that's not working for us.
Yeah, interesting. I get where Brother Sahel was coming from, and I agree with you. I think it's layers. I don't think it's as black and white, but I do agree that there are some women who try to absolve themselves from doing the hard work. I think I'm not sure, but I think now it may have been Hanifa who was on the show where we talked about what was it? We were talking about the rise of the she economy, And there are some women. Let's be honest. I think Mika alluded to that. That there is a certain level of distrust between the Black community and the mental health professional community, especially when you don't look like us. There's a tendency to underdiagnose us. There's a tendency to misdiagnose us. And so naturally, there's some skepticism that people in our communities may have about going to some of these mental health professionals. In addition to that, money is an issue. It's not cheap to go to a therapist. So you have to have a great job that has, you have insurance. Your insurance will cover it. In some cases, some people don't have the insurance to cover it, so they can't afford it. And then there are those who can afford it, but they choose shopping as their therapy. I think there was a study that was done with the Xavier HBCU, Xavier University in New Orleans and ING, and it was something to the effect that they said nearly 60% of Black women shop whether the economy is good or bad, and 55% shop to make themselves feel better about themselves. So there are those women out there who use shopping as a form of therapy, but I don't think Sir Hale was all the way off. I just think it's a little. The answer is a little bit more nuanced than that.